Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are here to recognize World AIDS Day. World AIDS Day takes place on the 1st of December each year. It's an opportunity for people worldwide to unite in the fight against HIV and to show support for people who are living with HIV and to commemorate those who have died from an AIDS-related illness. And the World AIDS Day was founded in 1988 and is the first ever global health day. And what we see is that globally, there are an estimated 38 million people who have the virus. And despite the virus only being identified in 1984, more than 35 million people have died of HIV and AIDS, making it one of the most destructive pandemics in history. So today, scientific advances have been made in HIV treatment. There are laws to protect people living with HIV, and we understand so much more about the condition. Yet, despite this, each year people are diagnosed with HIV. People do not know the facts about how to protect themselves and others, and there continues to be stigma and discrimination, and this remains a reality for people who are living with the condition. And so, ladies and gentlemen, World AIDS Day is important because it reminds us as individuals and as a collective that HIV has not gone away. There is still a vital need to, one, raise money, two, increase awareness, three, fight prejudice, and four, improve education. So it's an opportunity for us to show solidarity to the millions of people who are living with HIV worldwide. And today, most people are wearing an HIV awareness red ribbon. I tried to get a ribbon here in the UK. I couldn't find it. So I ended up wearing a red dress. So this is how I'm pledging solidarity. But before we go on, ladies and gentlemen, may I ask that we observe a moment of silence to remember those who have left us because of HIV and AIDS. Remember those who have left us because of gender-based violence. Let's just bow our heads for a moment and recognize those. May I ask that everyone who's joining us mute their gadgets. Thank you very much. Let us observe a moment of silence, as I indicated, for those who have left us due to HIV and AIDS, and for those who have left us because of gender-based violence. Thank you. We've all been muted, so we hopefully will not be able then to have problems anymore. You are all welcome. Welcome, Sisa. Welcome, Andile. Mamulindi Weposwa, welcome. Warriors, you are welcome. Silulami, you are welcome. Thank you. Jill, thank you so much for joining. Andile Memeza, you are welcome. Thank you so much. I've just shared, the statistics worldwide about HIV and how we really need to be aware and get rid of the stigma that is associated with HIV. The reason why we are hosting this webinar as Brand South Africa is because we want to share with you inspiring stories so that those who are infected with HIV can own their truth and live without fear and live without shame. And this, nobody epitomizes this more than our guest of honor, Unozibele Kamgana, Mayaba. I know school will want us to mention the Mayaba as well. And we also have Ubuntu Pathways represented by Beth Honig, who's going to be sharing how Ubuntu's model and programs support those who are either infected by HIV or affected by HIV. each of us does know somebody who has been infected by the disease. So we are all affected by this pandemic. All that we need to do is to encourage each other, whether we are infected or affected, to live positive lives and to support those who have been infected. We have, Nozibele Kamgana Mayaba. She's a blogger, she's a storyteller, she's a self-published author. Her book is called I Am Still Me. And she's an award-winning social entrepreneur. And you'll soon discover that she's my twin. And I know a lot of you here in the UK, when I sent you the invitation, you said, every time we watch her, she reminds us of you. So I think our parents need to talk and share with us, what happened there in terms of our families. But it's lovely. I first met Unozi when she came to the UK a couple of years ago, and she was speaking at an Ubuntu Pathways Gala dinner. So here is the connection. Nozi used to work for Ubuntu Pathways in Port Elizabeth, and Beth Honig is the UK director for Ubuntu Pathways. And Beth Honig is the one that is running the Ubuntu Pathways UK office. So she's this link between us having met, because it was in her function where Nozi was the speaker and I attended. And at the end of the day, we all danced, and I was actually intrigued by the way that Nozi carried herself and the spirit of excellence that Ubuntu Pathways has in terms of running their events. Let me tell you, if there is any Ubuntu Pathways Gala dinner you want to attend, it is excellent. And then I was sharing earlier with Beth and also with Nozi that I remember that at the end of the gala dinner, we danced with Nozi, and she was wearing a pink tulle. And we had a good time. But what I love about all of us, me, Beth, Nozi, is that we have a spirit of excellence. We are professional, but we also like to have fun. You cannot be a social dwarf and a professional giant. So on to it before we go on. Ubuntu Pathways, by the way, is a non-profit organization. It provides South Africa's most vulnerable children with what every child needs. It gives them everything and every day. And it, since its inception in 1999, it's grown into a thriving community institution in the heart of Port Elizabeth Township. As well, it has become a global model for poverty alleviation, for garnering recognition, and it's been able to be recognized by World Economic Forum, Aspen Institute, the President Bill Clinton, and their patron, who's Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And so there are pictures actually online. If you want to go, there's an Ubuntu campus which is in Port Elizabeth, and it is a symbol of their belief that access to quality education and healthcare is a right and not a privilege. So we are so grateful that we are here today, and we are joined by this esteemed set of guests coming from Ubuntu Pathways, which is Beth and Nozi, who's going to share with us her story. So are we ready?
We are.
So, okay, as a starting point, whichever of you can start, Nozi or Beth, tell us, why are you so passionate about World AIDS Day? Let's start with Beth, and then we'll come to Nozi.
Sure. Thank you so much, firstly, Pamela, for that beautiful introduction and very important reminder of why it's essential that we all pay note to today, and not just today, but carry this spirit forward for the other days in the year. Thank you, everyone, for joining, obviously. I'm most passionate about World AIDS Day because, unfortunately, HIV/AIDS is so prevalent in South Africa, where Ubuntu is based. You spoke about figures generally globally there. In South Africa, 34.5% of the population are HIV positive, living with HIV. That's 1 in 3. That's 8 million people. Those numbers are really too high, in my opinion. And in the townships of Port Elizabeth, where we're based, as you mentioned, the statistics are even more shocking. I mean, nationally and locally in our area, women are disproportionately affected by the HIV pandemic compared to men. So because of the prevalence of gender-based violence that you mentioned, they are twice as likely to be HIV positive than men are. And that's especially prevalent for women under the age of 24. In our area where we're based, 57% of people who are living with HIV are not taking their medication. So that means they're just not being as healthy for themselves as they could be. And you were saying everybody's affected, even if you're not infected, and that's absolutely right. In our community, 100% of the children that we work with, and many of those are orphaned and vulnerable, they are all affected or infected. So HIV/AIDS is a very real threat and reality for people growing up in those townships. And it's my responsibility as our UK director to raise awareness about that, and our responsibility as an organization to try and change that trend. So we have a number of things that we do, interventions that we do to do that. And to try and address the situation. But I will pause there and let Nosy have a chance to speak.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Okay, go ahead, Nosy. Thank you. Share with us your journey, your personal story, your experience, and obviously its linkage to today.
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about it, particularly over the last couple of years. I've always been in development somehow. As you said earlier on, I worked for Ubuntu for a number of years. The interventions that Beth was talking about, being hands-on, making sure that the HIV interventions are deeply, improving the lives of people in our community, particularly in Port Elizabeth. But my life changed also. When people say, you never fully understand something until it happens to you. So although I was quite deep in terms of our interventions, I will say that I don't think I fully understood where our clients were coming from when it comes to HIV until it happened to me. So August of 2013, I was diagnosed HIV positive. I was at work.
Oh, we've lost her at the pivotal moment.
Seems like breaking there. Okay, let's do this. Can I encourage all of you who have joined us to just share your comments, your questions. If you want to be anonymous, you can maybe send me a WhatsApp message and we'll ask that question. I promise you I will not mention your name. And so whilst we're waiting for Nosy to come back, I must say, Beth, that what impresses me about Ubuntu Pathways is that you believe in trusting those who are closest to the problem to create the solution. And what you've done is to create a world-class staff development initiative and to make sure that the team leaders are from the communities that they serve. Tell us about that model and how it has been so far.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that is one of the most important things if you're going to try and address any issue, be it HIV/AIDS or gender-based violence or food poverty. It's got to be community-based. It's got to be community-led. It's got to be created by, led by, delivered by those from the community for the community. And so 95% of Ubuntu staff are from the community. Nosy mentioned she worked for us for 5 years. She was actually a student of ours for 10 plus years before that. So we are always looking for students who come through our program to join our staff where possible, because they are brilliant kind of experts of what we're trying to do themselves. But regardless of whether they've been a student or not, we find that kids need role models to look up to, and those role models need to look like them and talk like them, and most importantly, have experienced the same things as them. And so when kind of Nosy and you were talking about the interventions that we have offered, specifically relating to HIV, because we are a community-based organization, because we have that Ubuntu Center that you mentioned, which is all about world-class service delivery. When we built it, we specifically built a clinic inside the center. We'd seen that the government clinics were overburdened, understaffed, and there was a lot of stigma surrounding AIDS and HIV. So what we wanted to do was centralize our clinic within a holistic environment. So you could be walking into the Ubuntu Center to go get some food, or to chat to one of our colleagues, or to go have a checkup if you happen to be HIV positive, but no one needs to know that. And so creating that world-class clinic environment within our community center has been key. And so with that clinic, we've been able to do a number of clinical interventions to help those who are living with HIV manage their treatment and live positively. So we have a doctor, we have nurses, we have a nutritionist, and anyone who is enrolled can come and see those staff members. We help them manage their viral loads to keep them as low as possible, which means that actually the prevalence of the virus within their blood isn't at dangerous levels. We help work out exactly what the right regimen of drugs for them is, because there's no one size fits all. It's not like everyone can just take one pill, one antiretroviral pill. Everyone needs a specific concoction for their own body. And then we monitor them really closely. We do different levels of kind of distribution. If people are adhering to their medication, we kind of give them a long runway of pills, so they only need to come every month or few months. But if they're struggling, then we give them smaller doses of their medication so that we can make sure that they come and they do their check-ins. And the other really important element, I think, is that you have to address things holistically. You can't just do it clinically. So very much as you kind of talked about the stigma surrounding HIV AIDS, and Nosy kind of talked about not really understanding it until it happened to her. It's so important to provide psychosocial counseling and emotional support to anyone who is getting tested and realizing that their status isn't quite what they thought, because it can take some people years to be ready to accept it and do something about it. And then even when they start taking their medication, of course, there's side effects. So really helping people manage their treatment. And then also, sexual health, family planning for people who are newly infected. So all sorts of women's health checkups, STI checks. And unfortunately, this is very often survivors of sexual abuse and gender-based violence, as we've touched on. So it's so important. And then, of course, there's all the prevention. So, you got to help people who are positive to live a healthy life. But you've also got to do your part, like you were saying, to educate those and raise awareness. So we do everything from outreach workshops within the community to encourage testing, to reduce stigma. But also we have a very specific program for mothers who are HIV positive and pregnant, and we help them prevent the transmission of the virus to their unborn babies, and by providing a lot of prenatal care, early intervention checkups, monitoring of the mother during the pregnancy, ultrasound scans, a whole set of deliveries for the mother, but then also once the baby is born, providing the infant with HIV inhibitors and regular testing, we can actually stop the virus passing. And that is so key. And I think that is one of the most beautiful things. And I'm so kind of proud and grateful to say that these interventions have been working. So in the community.
And on that note, we have Nosy.
Great.
Nosy. Wonderful.
I'm so sorry. My laptop decided to just shut down. I do not know what happened. So I was just happy to reconnect again. I apologize for that.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. For those who have just joined us, ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking with Nozibele Kamgana Mayaba. She's a South African International Youth Committee Ambassador. She's an active member of the International Youth Forum. She's received a number of accolades, such as being listed in the Nelson Mandela Chamber Top 40 Under 40, Businesswomen Association of South Africa Regional Achievers Awards, the Fruits of Democracy Awards for Excellence in Civil Society, and the Vision for Women. And she is living a positive life, having been infected with HIV. Nozi, over to you. Inspire us, share with us the story, we just all ears.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, you know, I've been in the community or in the development sector, but as Beth said, I was continuing to say, you never truly understand something until it happens to you. So I come from a very strict traditional background. I was saying, this other friend of mine, you know, my mom is like a typical, very African mom. You know, she does not play around. Even today, she won't think twice to put me in my place. Okay. So I grew up as one of those kids where I could never do anything wrong because I was always guided. The most important thing to my family was get your education, you know, make sure that you have everything that you wanted in life. So I graduated. By the time I was 21, I bought my mom a house, I traveled the world, and at 21, I was like, oh, okay, I actually have done, you know, what my family has asked me to do. It's time now to live my life. And, you know, we come from also a cultural background where, you know, you're not allowed to have, you know, a child out of wedlock. You know, you're not allowed to have a child before marriage. It even goes to an extent where you're not even allowed to have sex before marriage, right? So I was one of those, you come from one of those families. But as I grew up, I was like, no, man, I've done everything that I needed to do. Now it's time to live my life. And I met a person, swept me off my feet, because I was always told that I should wait for the right person. But here's the thing, I was never told how this right person would look like or how they will come in what form. So the first person promised to marry me, I was like, yes, this is it. And without even thinking twice, I knew my status because I tested regularly, just to keep my health in shape, you know, everything, just to make sure everything was fine. But here's the thing, I didn't ask him to give me his status or his results. So we continued to engage in sex without a condom, anything like that. A year later, randomly at work, I was testing like a normal routine, very randomly. And the nurse told me you know, she needed to conduct a second test. And I found it very odd that she wanted to do this, but she did it anyway, the second one. And after that, she put both tests in front of me and said, you know, my test came out positive. It was a shock. First of all, let me say this. I was sure that she had made a mistake, okay? And funny now that I say that. I know it's not funny, but it's actually very funny because I actually thought those finger tests that have been obviously scientifically proven to detect an HIV, like a virus in the system. I was the one person, I was like, those things, I've heard those things that they're 99.9% correct. And I must be that 0.1% like is incorrect. So I went to a doctor and they confirmed that no, it actually is true. I was confused. I was in denial for many years. It only started to hit me when my then partner left. He was like, I thought to myself, okay, this is a really bad.
When did your partner leave? At which point did your partner leave? After you told him that these are the results, and how did he react when you told him?
So listen, I tested August of 2013, like literally right there, because we used to work together. So I called and I was like, hello, I just came back from the wellness day and they just told me I'm HIV positive. Do you know about this? And he kept quiet. And when we started talking, he said to me, he doesn't know what happened. He does not know what happened. And for many months to come, he still maintained that. So the relationship started crumbling down, not even 6 months after that. And that's when he made the decision that, that's it. He does not want to be in the relationship anymore. And that's when it started to hit me. That's when it
I'm
started
sure
to
it hurt as well. I'm sure it hurt.
It
Like
did
a
because
double dose of pain, you know?
before that, I think I was under the illusion that this is a really bad situation. However, since now there's this person, because I couldn't tell my family. For 7 years, no one knew in my family. My brother didn't know, my mom didn't know, like no one knew. So for 7 years, I hid like the fact that I was HIV positive because I always maintained I do not want to be responsible for the death of my mom. She worked at
The
TB
shock
hospital.
that you would have after finding out, eh?
Exactly. She worked at a TB hospital, and by virtue of working at a TB hospital, she worked also with HIV patients. So you can only imagine she will come home and tell me this, she saw this, she saw that, young people dying before her eyes. And for me now to go back to her and tell her my diagnosis, I thought it would kill her. So I literally only told her late last year.
And how did you survive the 7 years of not sharing, Rosie?
I do not know.
How did you cope? In fact, let me just say, how did you cope? You know?
It was hard. I think it was particularly hard because I still wanted to maintain. As you can see, I am overly dramatic and I'm very animated, and so I think what almost killed me was that I wanted to maintain this perception that everything was fine, whereas I was not fine. So I think that's what almost killed me mentally, physically. And I literally at one point I was like, okay, you know what? I need to tell like one of my friends, one of my closest friends. And that's how I survived with her support. Until a point where I was like, in a perfect world, I would tell my family, but it would take me years to do that.
You are very strong, and I would also like to thank that friend that gave you the support. Wow, wow,
Absolutely.
wow. And fast forward, let's get to the fact that you then were able to meet someone, and I'm asking you to share this because sometimes people will think that it's the end of the world when you infected by HIV. So share with us how you were able to meet someone and move on with your life from a romantic point of view now.
Yeah. So let me first start by saying this. I was also chatting to someone earlier on, and they were saying to me, Nazi, it's 2020. Do you really think that HIV is still like a big thing? Is it still a big deal? Is there still stigma around HIV? I mean, there's treatment, people live longer. And that's what breaks my heart, because I said to him, if there was no stigma, I wouldn't have like kept quiet for 7 years. I suffered alone for 7 years. And it's because people think the stigma is the stigma we experienced in the 1980s when we were first introduced to HIV, when you couldn't touch anyone with HIV, when you couldn't be near anyone with HIV, we didn't know anything, didn't have any medication. There's a different kind of stigma that we're experiencing at this point in time. And it's the point in time where the well-educated, well-presented nosy should have known better. Do you get what I mean? So when I go forward, there's a perception that I can't go forward. People like me are afraid to go forward because they should have known better. They should have made better decisions. But reality is there's no phase to HIV. There's none. The director of so-and-so, a huge multinational company, is HIV positive, and you don't even know it. You dig what I mean? A person that is unemployed in the township is HIV positive, and you don't even know it. So that's the first thing that I just wanted to clear out in terms of the stigma. I met my husband in 2016 by chance. I was already at a point where I think my focus was just to get better. Mentally, physically, I was not, it was never the ideal thing where, oh, I would love to meet someone. You know, my focus was like, girl, you need to be fine, okay? You need to be, you to take care of yourself. That was the ultimate goal. And in that midst of that, that's when I met him. And I thought to myself, okay, this guy is here to confuse me, because then now I need to disclose my status and I'm not sure how they're going to handle it. So I remember I told him like a month later, like after we met, and it was a more defense mechanism also from my side. I was like, I need to tell him so that he can get out of my life, because he's really, I'm not ready for all of this. Do you get what I mean? And I remember telling him, I mean, he didn't flinch once when I told him about my HIV status, and the fact that, you know, 9 months after I was diagnosed, I carelessly still fell pregnant. I had an abortion. So I was bombarding him with all of this. I was like, but you need to take all of this and get out, to run, okay? You need to run, because there's a lot of baggage that comes with me. And I still even remember, I was like, oh, thank you for sharing your story. I would still like to go out for lunch. Would you care to join me? And yeah, so 2020, 5 years later, we married, and yeah, that will be how I met my husband.
And then you made the decision to come out and be open and authentic to the world. How did you make that decision, and how did you go about coming out?
First of all, let me just say this. It was never my intention to come out. Let me just make very clear. As I said, I wanted to be better. So I remember, you know, I started seeing a therapist, and my therapist, you know, started encouraging me to write. And I was writing all these years about what was happening. And it was only late 2018 when I thought to myself, you know, I've always been the person that, you know, I'm very spiritual, and I've always, you know, I wanted to live a life of purpose. I wanted to live a life of change. I want to be that person that inspires change. And I've done that throughout my whole life with my story. What will be different this one? Do you get what I mean? So it was only late 2018 when I was like, in a perfect world, this will be a really good manual of how I overcame the stigma around HIV, and how I came to be the person that I am today. But obviously there were so many things that I needed to overcome, such as disclosing to my family. So that needed to come out first. And when I came out, I was like, honestly, when I came out, I was like, okay, it's going to be a handful of people that are going to listen to me. It's not going to be a big deal. Do you get it? It's not going to be a big deal. Then it became a big deal. I started a YouTube channel, and then it kind of blew like beyond my expectations. And you'll be very, I think the one thing that surprised me the most, Pumela, is that you don't understand how many people have come forward that have also shared their own stories. And they're saying to me, not you. They were saying, if it was not you coming out, I wouldn't have the courage to start my treatment. I wouldn't have the courage to disclose to my partner. I wouldn't have the courage to disclose to my family. And I'm thinking how many people are in a similar situation, and people keeping quiet. So that's when I started now understanding the impact of one story. And I got motivated to share more. And I just blown away by the whole process.
And you know, as you've correctly said, the impact of one story. And also, I think the essence of also what you've shared is that HIV infection has no race, and HIV infection has no class, and HIV infection has no age. Thank you so much, Nozi, for sharing your story. I see you are getting mothers here. School is getting mothers-in-law. You're getting friends from the chats that we are having. Beth, let me come back to you. What have you done at Ubuntu to address some of the challenges that even Nozi has spoken about?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, the treatment that I mentioned in the clinic is key. That's the first thing, right? You know, helping people who have got to that point of wanting to know their status and then wanting to do something with that status. Already, as you've just heard from Nosy, that can take some people 10 years, 5 years, a lifetime. So there's a lot of work before then that I'll talk about. But once they're there, the medical and the psychological support to help them actually live a really healthy life is so important. And I think, you know, we created this world-class clinic so that our service delivery could be the best in the world, just like you would see in London or in South Africa's elite. Like, just because you're in Ubuntu is based in the townships does not mean that the people there deserve anything less than the best. And so in that clinic, having staff who can be a little bit like Nosy, I guess. You know, Nosy was describing how people are coming forward and sharing because they trust her and they feel inspired by her. So having our staff be role models to our clients and to young children and to pregnant women and anyone of any gender and any age is super important. And I'm happy to say that that has been really effective. So in our community, people who are HIV positive, are only 57% of them are adhering to their medication, but amongst Ubuntu clients, 91% of our clients who are positive are adhering to their medication. And that just shows you that if you wrap a team of support, of clinicians, of therapists, of support workers, of friends, let's face it, if you put a support system around an individual that's holistic and that's world-class, actually those people can take their life in their own hands, and they can be in this phase that Nosy is in now of owning their status and not being held back by it, and even in some cases like Nosy making a whole other life because of it, which is just beautiful. And I think, you know, for pregnant mothers, you know, Nosy was talking about the fear and the burden of what her status could do to her mother. And that's incredibly powerful in itself. And I think also if you're a pregnant woman, you must feel that incredible burden of what your status could do to your unborn child. So to empower someone with the knowledge and the medication and the support system that will prevent that kind of catastrophe in their eyes, so that their baby is not born into any form of medical or psychological disadvantage, is so important. And so 100% of our mothers, that's 58 mothers last year, gave birth to HIV-free babies. And if you can start doing things like that, then the world is your oyster.
Wonderful. I like what you are saying about people owning their status and not being held back by it, and the cherry on top being Nosy making a life out of this status. We have a comment from Jill Ritchie. Jill Ritchie is the guru of fundraising for charities, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, Jill.
She's just said that you are an amazing role model, Nozibele. Bless you. Wow, Beth, amazing stats from Ubuntu's intervention. Wonderful. Keep up the good work. Hi, Jill. Jill, can we unmute you? This is random. Jill, now that I see you on video, can we unmute you? Do you want to say a few words?
Yes. Hi, Nosy. It's an honor to meet you, Pamela. You're just my sister and I love you. And Beth, I've known you forever and I'm incredibly proud of what you do. So keep up the good work, all of you. Lots of love.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you so much. And I also want to recognize another sister, Belu Mabandla. She's the head of North Europe at African Tourism. Thank you for joining us, Belu. Thank you so much. You know, when we're talking about Nosy making a life out of her story, she has a YouTube channel that is based on living positively with HIV. And in 2020, ladies and gentlemen, her channel was named by FitSpot as one of the top 15 HIV YouTube channels on the world. And on top of that, she's got the book I Am Still Me, which is based on her life living with HIV after being diagnosed in August of 2013. Now, Nosy, let's come to your book. What inspired you to write this book, and what can people expect out of this book?
What I love about the book is that obviously it is not only about my HIV status. It literally captures my whole entire life. When I started writing, I actually thought to myself, okay, really, there was a need for this book because my life that didn't start when I was diagnosed HIV positive. I actually even started when I was born. My brother and I were born as a result of an affair between my mom and my dad. And I talk about the challenges experienced as children born, out of an affair and in society's terms considered as illegitimate, and the struggles of having to find our fit, whether or not we belong to our family side or our father's side. Which surname do we take? What rights do we have over our father's home and all of those things? And having to be, skipped from one family to the next, just to find some kind of comfort as children. So it all captures the essence of that. And growing up, particularly when it comes to me, culturally, I'm the last born and the only girl. And the burden that I felt growing up as the only hope for my family. So having to not experience childhood the way I would have desired to, because I wanted to quickly grow up so I can take care of my family. The burden of that, like, I can't even put it into words, because you don't live for yourself. You constantly worry about, I started working when I was 12 years old, while my peers were playing, in the streets, ropes and all of those things. I was worried about getting money so that, I can help my mom. So it captures all of those things and just puts it into paper. And that's why every time, I speak to people, that's why I say, you may not necessarily relate to the HIV story, but there's parts of you that you're going to find in the different aspects of my journey. And I think that's what the beauty of my journey is about. It's about everyone. Honestly, it's about everyone. So sometimes, like, I make a joke, but I think people get it. Every time I sign a book, I always say, may you find parts of yourself in this book. Not necessarily about HIV, but the different journey, that I've traveled.
Oh, that's wonderful. And ladies and gentlemen, what strikes me and really touches my heart is when Nozi says that my life did not start when I was infected with HIV. That is so profound, Nozi, and it also gives hope that people can know that they were a person before the infection, and they will continue to be somebody significant in life despite the circumstances. Now we have Evangelist Fikelepi Jackson asking how she can buy the book. Now she's based here in London. Can you just share, whether there's a plan for people to be able to get the book in London, and also how can those who are in South Africa get the book as well?
Okay, so let me start about the process that we've already started. In South Africa, the book is self-published, but as I'm getting exposed to different platforms, I'm also still praying that it gets picked up by a publisher so that it can even reach greater heights. So it's self-published. All the sales come directly to me. So my email address is nozi@gmail.com. I'm sure you're going to share it with everyone on this call. They can just email me. I'll forward all the details. As soon as a proof of payment is forwarded, I courier the book across South Africa. It takes about a day to reach that person. And then outside of South Africa, particularly in the UK, I know Beth and I spoke about it just yesterday. I'll be sending, a bulk order to the UK office, the Ubuntu Pathways UK office. And I think that's more going to be easy because, with COVID-19, it has really become difficult to facilitate, how the book gets out. And so that I'm going to be sharing also those details with you, Pumela. But it's going to also all be facilitated from the UK office.
Okay, wonderful. I've just shared your email here for everyone, if everyone could note there. We also have Usis Nobundu, who says she's one of your many thousand followers on YouTube. She's here in the UK as well, and she's really, really, really happy.
Thank you.
Now, Jill says that as a fellow writer, you may want, she's speaking to you as a fellow writer, saying that you may want to consider offering a PDF version. So you can, you know what, I'll link you with Jill. She's a good person. I'll link you with her. And then Unoktula says, no, that's how I can summarize your braveness and strength. Thank you, Noktula. Yeah, I mean, okay, now there's a question from a father here, and he's saying, how can we as African men help our boys not to spread the infection? So,
thank you so much.
He's also
you know what,
actually
I'm grateful.
United Kingdom as well, and he's a community builder. But Elias Mchweni is a community builder here in the UK.
I'm so happy that that question came up, because as I was doing a talk today, that was one of my touching points, and I'm so passionate about this aspect, but more so because I speak on it as a woman. Right. So when we look at HIV stats, as Beth said earlier, every now and then when a government official or a head of state, talk about investment that are going to our health, it always is women and children are the most vulnerable, and we need to make sure that we target them. But not understanding that targeting women and children is a more reactive, intervention. That's not where the problem is. In a society as Africa, where we're fighting gender-based violence each and every day, our interventions are not aligned in terms of what we want to achieve when it comes to HIV, right? So, stats also show that men are less likely to test than women. Women are able to, to get tested through the PMTCT program when they're pregnant. It's a routine checkup, but it's not necessarily the same when it comes to men. And so when you look at the stats, there's discrepancy and an inequality, and we think that men are less likely to get HIV, but it's exactly the opposite. So that's why we actually need to just rearrange our whole interventions to target more men. Our interventions are not talking to our men, to our fathers, to our brothers, to our young boys. When you walk into a clinic in South Africa, it is flowers, it is pink to some extent. I mean, it's a little thing that when a man walks in and think to themselves, well, this is not a place where I should be. Honestly, like I did this whole, study for my undergrad, for my honors, and that's a response that they walk into a clinic and it doesn't speak to them. That's why they don't understand why they should go there. So make sure that we're community leaders from the top. In South Africa at the moment, if you have to count NGOs at a national level, supported by our national government, it's only Sonke Gender Justice and Soul City and a very few men's clinic that focus from a more campaign point of view to our men, and it's not enough. So it starts at home, continuously having these conversations about behavior of our young boys, how we groom them. It starts there, and supported actually even by our national government.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's go to Beth now and ask you, Beth, what are some of the myths that you would like to actually bust about HIV or AIDS?
Thank you. I mean, there's a few for me. The first is that if you're a woman and you have a newborn baby, that you can't breastfeed, and that is a myth. Does not ring true. If your viral load is low, if you're adhering to your medication, if you are healthy, and if your baby is healthy and passing all these tests, and at Ubuntu we actually specifically run breastfeeding workshops, and like a breastfeeding cafe to encourage mothers to know the information first and foremost, to know how to do it. it is possible, and you will not pass the virus on to your baby, and in fact you'll pass on to the baby all the incredible nutrients that are in a mother's breast milk. And you know, in a country like South Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, and really so many parts of impoverished countries in the world, malnutrition is such a key problem, as you know, in the fight against poverty, in the fight against all these horrible pandemics that we find ourselves in. So much of it comes back down to the fact that children are born into disadvantage and don't have access to the right things early on, and those first few years for a baby are so key. So we do a lot of work with young mothers to encourage them that they can trust that their breast milk will be healthy and safe for their baby. I think another one is that, you know, HIV is not a death sentence. I've talked about the kind of clinical and psychological interventions that we've done to support our clients. And I think there is no better example of someone who is living life to the fullest than Nosy. And, you know, if you see her as a role model, you will see that actually, in a way, HIV can be an opportunity, right? It can be your motivation to turn your life around and to take ownership and to really make the most of it. And I think, you know, in today's medicine and in today's world, we really can't look at it in those old-fashioned terms. It's just outdated now. You know, if we can invent a vaccine for COVID in less than 8 months, we can definitely live positively even with an HIV status. And then I think the other thing is just kind of on a more larger scale effort is that we cannot approach any pandemic or any medical illness or diagnosis in one dimensional way. It cannot just be medically, and it cannot just be emotionally, and it cannot not just be nutritionally. It has to be holistically, and it has to be done in a really world-class way. So we can't shortchange children and young women and young men who are growing up in disadvantaged areas. We have to be able to afford to them the same opportunities as those who are privileged. But we also have to know that if you just give someone their ARVs, that does not mean that they are going to live a positive life. You have to provide that whole support system around them. And, you know, with the pandemic that we've just had, one of the, or I can't say in the past tense because we're still very much in this pandemic, and in South Africa, in fact, the COVID rates are rising scarily, and our area in Port Elizabeth is a national hotspot. But you know, there was a big fear with the pandemic that it would disproportionately affect those who were living with HIV. And that was a fear that we had at Ubuntu. I had it on a personal level for everyone that I knew who would be maybe affected more than most. I think there are ways to prevent that becoming the reality. So when the pandemic struck, we had to pivot all of our programs. We went from being this kind of cradle to career organization addressing all different issues with an array of programs, and we pivoted and we focused our interventions on just major food security to 30,000 people and PPE provision to 27 institutions, and we effectively closed our campus to the community and said, you can't come because we have to reduce the risk of contracting COVID. But what we did was that we kept the clinic at the Ubuntu Center open. And I think that was one of the best decisions we ever made, because, you know, the fear was that those who were HIV positive would no longer get access to treatment, or that because their immune systems were compromised because of the HIV, they would have a more severe form of the virus and potentially therefore be more affected than others. But if you keep those sites open where people can come in a socially distanced way, like we've done, we have all of our staff in full PPE, we have temperature gauging and reading at the entrance. If you do that, you can ensure that no one's treatment stops. And so I'm really happy to report that 100% of our HIV positive clients during these last 8 months have had uninterrupted support and treatment from us. And that's, you know, that's like over 700 clinical interventions during a global pandemic. And I'm saying this not to promote Ubuntu, but to promote this approach that if you're going to like get rid of myths and start to address issues holistically and properly, you really need to prioritize the most important things. You need to do things holistically at a world-class level. And you need to remember that there's individuals at the heart of all of this. No one is a statistic, you know, everyone is a nosy. And so we just have to keep that at the center of any form of intervention that we do.
Wonderful. We are left with 6 minutes before the end of our talk. I know that we are all passionate and we would go on forever. Let's just give an opportunity then to Nozi to, in your view, Nozi, what are some of the myths that you hear or see out there about, you know, people living with HIV or AIDS or just the pandemic itself?
Okay, so I'm just gonna share like a brief story. So the other day on social media, someone was being introduced to my story for the first time, and it's cool and nice story. And I guess she had not really gone to YouTube or anything like that. She had just shown in a glimpse of what is happening. So she comments and says, "Oh, I just found it so romantic that your husband intentionally got infected because he's so in love with you. And I'm so happy that worked out for you." And obviously people were coming down on her, like, how could you say that? 2020, can you get educated? But then I took a step back and I said to everyone, you know what, I actually appreciate her coming forward and saying that, because she even said, I wish my relatives can also see this. So her relatives are more in a similar situation. Can you imagine what is going on with her and the rest of the family with that mentality or with that lack of awareness? So it's things like that when I look at them and I say, I wish people can be aware that until there's zero infections in South Africa and the rest of the world, we can never do enough with HIV. Like until zero where there's a cure or there's zero infections and no one is infected anymore, then we stop talking about HIV. But the assumption that people know that a child, you know, me being HIV positive and I can birth a child that is HIV negative is possible, there's still a lot that needs to be done. The fact that I'm being asked if my husband was being HIV negative, that I intentionally infected him, it means that there's so much that we need to do. So there's so many, but that's one that stick out for me the most, because it was just asked the other day, and it really took me back that everything that we are doing is not in vain. It honestly is not, because people need all this awareness.
Wow, I admire your response to the way that the person had commented, so that you turned it for good and you turned it to educate people. That's very profound of you. And I think, well, okay, we've got Baba Raklanya here. She told me that your favorite song is Konke Kusebenzela Ukulunga. Baba Raklanya is a radiographer here in the United Kingdom. And I think how this relates to your story is that everything that happened to you might have happened for a reason, so that you can be the voice for the voiceless. So nothing happens in vain. And we admire you for having embraced what happened to you, so that you can be a force for change, a force for good to others. We really, really admire you. And as I've shared with you, you have a lot of people that love you in the United Kingdom. And I hope that post-COVID, you will be able to visit us in the UK through Ubuntu Pathways. And then we can have something, even physically, when time allows. Beth, how's that? How about
yes,
physically?
I'm there. Nothing makes me happier than that idea.
Absolutely.
A reunion.
Well, yes, wonderful. In the 2 minutes that we have, can I then ask you, Beth and Nozi, to share with us, how can people then get involved? Nozi, how can people get involved with what you are doing? And Beth, how can people get involved with Ubuntu Pathways? And I'm going to ask that you also share your social media handles at this point. We have 2 minutes and then we'll close. 1 minute for each. Or should I say?
Okay, so it's gonna be quick for me. I see some of the guys that are already logged in here follow my YouTube channel, so I'm happy about that. Please follow my journey on YouTube. It's Nozibele Kamgana, and on Instagram and on Twitter it's at Nozi Kamgana. On Facebook, Nozibele Mayaba. Basically, like I share like all of my projects there. I would love support, you know, and through my book. You know, one of the goals was I do not want any country barriers or boundaries or anything like that in terms of making sure that my book gets to whoever needs to get it. So that's where I'm at this point in time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And from
Beth, how can people get involved?
Yeah, so I've just shared both my email address and Ubuntu's social media handle on the chat, but follow us on social media. So that's at ubuntupathways.org is our, ubuntupathways.org is our website. At Ubuntu Pathways is our social media handles. Email me if you want to get actively involved, help us spread the word. We're a small NGO. We are not as well known in the UK as we need to be. It's my job to change that, and I'm so appreciative of this opportunity and any others where other people can learn about what we do. If you want to and feel willing and able, please make a donation, because obviously, as you said, one of the key things to this is increasing funding into the sector so that we can help more individuals like Nosy and the rest of our clients. But also just buy Nosy's book. Nosy is one of my favorite people in the world, and I think her story represents so many students, young children, adults in South Africa that Ubuntu does work with, and also in other areas where we don't. And the best thing we can do as humans is just empathize with others. So yeah, follow us and buy the book.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. I just want to thank each person that is here. Babalo, can I ask you to greet Nozi in her language so that she realizes that she's a global South African? We have a global South African in the UK that speaks her language. I know you are her greatest fan. Can you greet her?
Hello, Nozi, unjani?
Right, I'm trying to act all professional and not be my
Well
okay,
done.
thank you so much.
Well done, Beth. Well done, Beth. Can I just say something quickly to Beth? Well done for managing not to have any interruptions with patients' treatment over this difficult time.
Oh, thank you.
Like,
Thank
you
you,
know,
Thank you so much. That
Thank
means a lot.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Babalwa. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, allow me to thank each and every one of you for the gift of your time today, for sharing your space and your time in hearing Nozi's story and the work that Ubuntu Pathways is doing through Beth. Those of you who are in the United Kingdom, please get in touch with Beth, because she through her organization, she's doing a lot of work that is tangible and it's got impact in South Africa. And Nozi, we are baptizing you as a global South African today, that you've gone global and you will continue to spread your wings across the world. And to each and every one of you who've joined this webinar, remember that one of Brand South Africa's programs is that you should play your part. So play your part wherever you are so that you can plow back into the community, use your skills, use your time, use your resources to help others and to help us build our nation and to help us build a better South Africa. For those of you who are coming from South Africa, I have to wear my South Africa hat. And those of you who are not from South Africa, let us continue to make the world a better place. I love all of you and I thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.